stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to tonight's planning board meeting. Please be aware of the fire exit, which is to your left of this room. In the event of an emergency, please move in a calm and orderly fashion down the stairs and do not use the elevator. The meetings are recorded by the secretary for the purposes of a record and minutes, so please identify yourself each time you come to the podium and speak into the microphone. The board will follow the items in the order that they appear on the agenda, extra copies of which are near the door. After the case has been called, the applicant and their representative shall come to the podium, identify him or herself, give his or her address, and then present their case. The planning board members will then have an opportunity to question the applicant. If this case is a public hearing, it will be open for public input, at which time anyone wishing to speak to the board regarding this application will come to the podium, identify themselves along with their address, and direct any questions to the board. Once all public input has been completed, the applicant or site representative will be given the opportunity to respond to any public input. Once all public input has been completed and all questions have been satisfied, the case will be closed to public input, and the board will then move on to a decision. No further input is allowed at that point. Michelle, if you will, introduce tonight's first case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First item on the agenda is case number PB 1303-1. Upon the matter of request by John and Debbie Giel for revised site plan approval to construct an outdoor patio with seating on premises 690 Titus Avenue in a mixed-use commercial district.
Joe, thank you for such a complete application.
Oh, thank you, Peter. My name is Joe O'Donnell. I'm the architect of record for this project. I have offices at 150 Versailles Road in Rochester, New York. Just as a quick, brief history of this, as you know, when we were opening up the Titus Tavern last fall, we had submitted plans for a patio, and through the process, we decided to table it till the spring in order to get the business an opportunity to get up and running and get a sense for how successful it's going to be. And I think that it's been obvious through the talking around town, and if you've been there yourself, that it's been a very successful opening. Before I begin, though, I'd also like to thank the board for allowing us to make the presentation tonight. We know a couple weeks ago we had submitted some revised design changes, but I think through that dialogue and conversation that night, we were all able to come to a good understanding of what was needed, and we hope that we've answered all your questions and provided all the information that you'd like. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is I did submit a ring binder to each of the board members in hopes to have everybody with complete information. If you'd like, we can run right through that, starting off with a letter to the planning board, which describes the scope of the project, which is the proposed 20 feet, which extends out southward from the front elevation of the Titus Tavern and across 27 feet parallel to Titus Avenue for an outdoor patio constructed of a Trex deck material for the decking and a wood railing with post details that mimic some of the architectural details present in the current facade. That was the main design change that we presented a couple weeks ago at the workshop, and we felt that this was an improvement over the previous design for several reasons. One, it was a more of a softer architectural element rather than a concrete patio. The wood railings, again, as I said, instead of being in aluminum with just 1x1 pickets and a top and bottom rail, is now more of an architectural feature. And we've also proposed quite a bit of an enhanced landscaping plan to the front. And in addition, which was one of the main concerns of the board back in the fall or last summer, was a way to prevent vehicular traffic from cutting across the front of the existing building. Not only will the proposed deck do so, but to prevent anybody from crossing any further or minimizing any risk to the patrons that may be out on the patio. So the deck will be directly accessed from the tavern itself at the same elevation, which is approximately 11 inches at the door, and I think there's just a slight slope down towards Titus Avenue, so it'll vary a little bit. It's proposed to have a seating of no more than 20 people in accordance with the town code that would then not require any additional parking. The landscaping, which has been designed by Irondequoit Landscape, and I believe Jeff will be in attendance at some point tonight if there's specific questions, but I did include in the package a landscape plan, a landscape rendering, and the species. So, moving on, the tab number 2 is our actual application to the planning board. Tab number 3 is the planning board checklist, in which we've gone down and identified each of the pieces of information that are on the site plan. Then in tab number 4, what I did was I included a existing site plan / proposed site plan that we had presented to the board last year. And then what I also did was the new site plan, which we had all worked out at the last workshop session, which now shows more decorative planters to prevent the vehicular traffic or accidental vehicular traffic from approaching the patio. The enhanced landscape plan in front of the area between the deck and the sidewalk itself. And again, showing that proposed possible gas fireplace in the middle of the patio, or the middle of the deck. However, I think I noted on my plans that final location may vary. Tab number 5 is a floor plan of the existing tavern, so that you can see, I think it was one of the board members' recommendation back in the fall that until the patio is built, that those second set of French doors remain locked and a table installed in front of them to prevent any inadvertent access to that area. So we did that, but it shows there now that door will now be accessible for the patio per the New York State Liquor Authority. If you can, moving along to tab number 6, we show a rendering of the proposed patio. And you can see that the column details, which we'll get into further details later in the presentation, basically mimic the columns and also some of the millwork inside the tavern itself. So we feel it's a nice gesture in tying the whole interior and exterior together. What the proposed framing of the deck is going to be, it'll be a 2x10 structure similar to a deck framing, and then Trex decks will be the actual decking itself. I did a little research that in hopes that we would have a black decking, but Trex actually discontinued it, and they have a really what they call a deep charcoal gray. She said it's like almost black, but people weren't buying it just because of the fact that it was black. So the connotation of that being something that draws a lot of heat and throws off a lot of heat, they changed the color composition a little bit to mitigate that concern and perception. The second rendering is, again, just the same, but shows a little bit better of the seating plan. There's 5 tables proposed out there with 4 seats for each, and possibly umbrellas that match the awnings that Titus Tavern has put up under the original construction. Again, there's page 3 of that. It continues to just show some renderings of that seating plan. Page 4 of that tab 6, I should say, initially showed those planters being sprinkled around the perimeter. I wanted to demonstrate what the changes in the design to the landscaping would be. And so if you then move right on to tab number 7, the first sheet is the plan of the landscaping. And again, this was developed by Rondequoit Landscaping. And in addition to the plantings up front to soften the edge between the existing sidewalk and the proposed deck, we're also proposing flower boxes at each end of the building, again, to prevent the vehicular traffic. But what we did was we feel like we took that even a step further, and I'll show you in the later tabs that the design of the boxes is also going to mimic the details of the railing and the post of the proposed deck itself. The landscaping is a mulch bed with a variety of different species in it. The second page to that tab 7 is the color rendering produced by the landscape designer. We've also introduced some large boulders into that to also mitigate, I think, Mr. Chairman, it was your concern at the work session of any inadvertent vehicles maybe coming off of Titus Avenue itself, or just an inadvertent vehicle from the parking lot, to protect the corners of the deck. We did show a bench in there that was kind of a little add-on. You know, that's something that we would like to have there, but we also don't want to create a place where, unwanted activity can happen with just mainly people hanging out and causing trouble. The third page of that tab 7 is the actual species of the landscaping proposed. We've got green velvet boxwoods, a tree, the height, I'm going to embarrass myself and not be able to pronounce this, a nice tree, dwarf ornamental fountain grass, and a Nepeta Walker's Low. So I think that Jeff has done a nice job in coming up with a good variety of species. The tab number 8, also again, which was a drawing that requested by the board itself to show the exact details. This actually will then become the working drawing submitted for permitting. It shows the structural framing of the deck itself, column locations, footing locations, footing details, railing details, heights, colors, a plan, and other detailed sections, which I will coordinate obviously with the building department if there's any questions related to that. Tab number 9 is the detail I mentioned about the flower boxes themselves. We wanted to keep them a little bit low. I indicated a 2-foot height because we thought, would it be nice with an 8-inch top cap on that? It actually could become a place where folks could sit around the flower boxes themselves if they want to take a break or just hang out on the corner to watch traffic and people watch. So that was the intent of the flower box being designed at a 2-foot height. And then tab number 10 is the board had asked about some lighting. We didn't want to put up any upright structures of lighting for a number of reasons. One being the competition with the gooseneck lights that are on the building itself. There is a street lamp right on the corner which illuminates the deck area. But what we thought would be nice would be a rope railing around the perimeter of the, a rope lighting, I should say, around the perimeter of the railing itself, which is photographed in the very last page of the presentation. It gives a nice wash of lighting down to the surface itself, and I think it'll look very attractive from the road as you go by. I know I've thrown a lot of information at you in a short period of time, but hopefully you've had an opportunity to take a look at this since receiving it about a week ago, and I'll open it up to questions.
Peter, can I say something before you open up to the board questions? Can I get my part out of the way before you open up the board questions? Okay. Mr. Chairman, I've asked permission to just give a preface to the board before you engage in questions, and I think it might be helpful in answering some of your questions or some of the concerns that you might have had. Of course, whenever I address the board, I always qualify my remarks. I'm trying to give you the best legal advice that I can, and in no way, shape, form, or fashion am I taking a position one way or another with regard to the application. What happened, or what has occurred, obviously, there's been some interest regarding this particular project, maybe because of its success and because of the ongoing application. And some concerns and questions came in over the course of the last week or so. I took it upon myself to contact some of the people who had made inquiries, who had given concerns, and to look into some of these matters, because I think this it's a site plan application, and so Section 274 of the town is applicable, even though it's an extension of your prior application. So all of these things, such as parking and landscape and everything, are relevant. Let me characterize, I think, the comment that I'm going to make to the board is what I perceive to be is growing pains. This is an application that hadn't previously been located here. It's in our Muck district, upon which the town obviously has great aspirations, and there have been some growing pains that I think needed to be addressed. What I did, I went to the property site on Saturday, and I visited with the various folks or entities there to try and figure out what it was that defined these. And they're really not, these are operational concerns, not so much design concerns, Joe, but I think they all tie together. And
Sure.
So I think it would be helpful for the board just to hear them out. Naturally, parking is a concern, and I think I would ask the applicants to address parking. We've reviewed the Muck parking requirements, and it seems as though you are within the parameters of the parking. And at the appropriate time, I think we could talk to Larry about it and make sure that we do. And I know that when I met with John Giel, He indicated that there might be some ideas about extending or enhancing the parking in that location. I don't want to take away your thunder. I just think that that's one thing that needs to be discussed with regard, and there is concern that the current application tonight could draw a greater clientele, so I think parking should be certainly not anything that we don't discuss tonight. Sort of as a side to the parking issue, address the snow removal. With the introduction of the deck, you're going to have less space to put it, and so we'll need to have an idea of how that would be impacting. I think the deportment of your clientele is something that's come up. Not being an expert in bar behavior, I can't speak to this directly, but, things like people outside smoking, loitering outside. I don't recall if the town has a loitering statute per se. It doesn't mean people can't meet and greet, but ongoing loitering, smoking, and other bar-related behavior. And it's my understanding that that has been addressed, and it will be addressed with somebody responsible for making sure that that's okay. Kind of as part of the parking, the delivery. You've got 3 separate businesses in there who draw delivery on a regular basis, and sometimes they're not small delivery vehicles. My suggestion, and again, it's just a suggestion so that we can live together. Remember, this is Arundecoit, and this is the cornerstone of the town. So I think what I'm trying to do is enhance everybody working together and cooperating. Maybe the owner, John, could get together with the 2 tenants and yourself and come up with an agreement. If you could contact your vendors so that the delivery vehicles come at a staggered time, and maybe even if it's possible, do the delivery on the Cooper Road side as opposed to within the parking lot, so you're not tying up the parking. That's just a suggestion. I think lastly, just when and if you do receive any approvals with regard to the deck, and again, I have not predicted and never given an opinion as to whether or not it would be the board's purview to approve this or not. But if you do, certainly it should not interfere with any of the existing businesses. The construction should be done in such a way so that there is no interference. Health, safety, and the welfare of the community are really the overriding concerns that you've got to factor in when you put all of these things together. And it is. It became painfully evident to me, not painfully evident, it became evident to me that there are some growing pains, but that's a good thing because that means the town's growing. So with that, I will turn it to the board for questions.
Do you want to address any of those before we start questions? I think.
Yeah, I think I would let John address those since they are more operational questions at this point. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, I'll answer some of those questions. John Giel, 710 Titus Avenue, owner of the property there. As far as the snow removal, actually, I believe that that reduces the problem by having a deck there. You have to remember the entire front will not have to be plowed. So now you're talking a 31 by 27 foot area that's deck that will not have to be plowed. So now you're reducing the amount of snow that will have to be pushed over in our 710 Titus Avenue area, And the only area that's going to be shoveled will be the area that's in front of Personal Design Florist, which is a shovelable area, and in the front of Titus Tavern. So like I say, I think that's really greatly going to reduce the amount of snow that's going to have to be moved. We're not going to have to shovel that deck during the winter, The snow's just going to be on there. As far as the deliveries, we've got it to the point right now where my partner Bucky, his daughter, runs the show for us, and she does all her ordering. We have 6 deliveries on Wednesday. She does all the ordering on Tuesday. I don't believe, on Wednesday is all our deliveries. I don't believe one of those trucks ever enters the parking lot. Most of it is either on Cooper Road, they park there, and I'm the one who does all the receiving on Wednesday. So as far as deliveries, I don't believe that's a problem at all. And owning the Cooper Deli for 30 years, we had a lot more deliveries than we ever have at Titus Tavern, and there was never ever a problem. And I believe we do coexist. Personal Design has their florist deliveries, and nobody complains about that. Nobody complains about the Cooper Deli deliveries. And I don't think that our problem the 5 or 6 deliveries that we have on a minimal basis, which is either on Titus Avenue or on Cooper Road, interferes with anybody's business at all. I mean, I may be wrong, but we're never taking up the parking lot at all. It's either on Titus Avenue, they park in front of 710 Titus Avenue for a minimum amount of time, or on Cooper Road for a minimum amount of time. What were the other concerns? Parking, yes, parking's an issue. I'm not going to argue that. We've lost a lot of sleep, my partner and myself, and we have hired somebody. Friday night's our main issue, and we have hired Bucky and myself. Actually, we're parking police for like 5 weeks in a row, and we've tried to remedy that. We are in the process. I've already spoken with Bob Kiefer, the engineer, who you guys obviously know, somewhat expanding the back area of our parking lot, our 710 Titus Avenue, to make that a parking lot. I believe the 10 or 12 lots that we could actually open up behind 710 would alleviate the stress that we have, and that stress is mainly concerned on 1 or 2 days. I think we're going to get to the point where once the weather breaks, there is going to be a lot more walking, and that's what's going to happen. I hope that, but I mean, I feel that by opening up the parking lot on 710, and I hope legally that's due. I've been in touch with Larry, and he's talked to Bob Kiefer about it too. I believe that will remedy that problem there. As far as I think the other problem was the clientele. We're trying the best we can. We have a big note on the register. The people that close up at night are supposed to check the perimeter every night, and if there's a problem, clean it up. Smoking, we're trying our best. We have no smoking signs there. We're not the Gestapo. We can't patrol the whole. We try our best, is what we're doing here.
Do you have a designated smoking area outside?
Pardon?
Do you have a designated smoking area
We
outside?
do, yes. It's on Cooper Road side. However, a lot of times people walk out there. I'm not sure how we can misdirect that without having a person out there all the time. I'd love to have it that way, And we don't want people smoking there, And we understand the concerns of personal design floors. It's not good for them, But we are trying to direct people. I imagine after a while people will get, enough people we tell, people will understand that the place to smoke is over on the side. Of course, you throw alcohol into the situation, maybe the rules go out the window a little more so. But we are trying our best to remedy that situation. And not only for us, Bucky and myself being good neighbors, but for myself being a landlord, it's a double hat I'm wearing here. So it is kind of difficult. But we are trying. Any other?
No.
I think that was it. Joe, you didn't happen to bring a sample of the deck material, did you?
I did in a brochure form, Pete,
Okay.
if that helps.
Larry, with the application, did he provide stamp drawings, or what we see is what we get?
In the ring binder, I don't believe they're sealed.
No, they weren't sealed.
Jay, do you have any questions?
I just was wondering about the drawings not being, at this point. First question I had was, do we have stamped drawings or not? So, I don't know if we can probably do preliminary tonight, but we need stamped drawings for final approval, especially in the Muck District, I imagine. It's up to you, Mr. Chairman, but that was one of the issues with, I think in the past, we've had approvals, even final approvals, subject to receipt of the stamped drawings, then they'd have to conform with all representations and submissions. I like the landscaping in the front. I don't see, I like the idea of filling in the landscape between there. It looks like there's about 12 feet of space between the deck and the sidewalk, correct?
Yep, approximately.
And is there gonna be some way of, when you do the landscaping to, you're gonna put some kind of seal around the edges so that it doesn't,
Curbing?
yeah, some kind of curbing?
I'm going to defer that question to our landscape contractor who's here. Just state your name.
Good evening, Jeff Riesenberger, 65 Pine Grove Avenue. John has not discussed any particular kind of curbing or edging, but it could be put in if if you'd like it. Basically, it's going to be bermed up a little bit, and the mulch, as you install it, it can be kind of packed into place a little bit so you don't have mulch sliding onto the sidewalk. And the plants are going to be kind of staggered sort of up and down so that they sort of block stuff from sliding around. But more or less, I wouldn't probably recommend a curbing because it's going to be a trip hazard and a problem with like the snow plows, sidewalk plows, that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm just talking about any kind of, anything in between the sidewalk and that if it's mounded up or broomed up, it's not going to stay that way if there's nothing to stop it from flowing out.
Like I said, more or less, when you put the mulch in, if you take the back of a rake or even your hands, kind of press it down, it kind of gels together into like a matting. And also because there's these kind of ground cover dwarf plants, they will, keep the mulch from sliding around as well. And it's not going to have a severe grade on it or anything to cause it to run off. There's not going to be any water coming at it other than, natural rainfall.
That's all I have.
Rich?
Nothing specifically for Mr. Riesenberger. First of all, I just want to be sure, Mr. O'Donnell, you received the HIP letter of March 18th?
No, I'm not aware of it.
Okay. I would want you to get that letter and have a chance to look it over. There's some really good suggestions in here, including plastic furniture. One of the concerns they have, and it's come up over and over, is on the site plan, if we do approve it subject to the drawings, there's a couple corrections that need to be made on the site plan. It's been referenced in the past. My first concern is the bench out front. Although I think the bench is a good idea in theory, I think putting a bench out in the middle of a mulch garden on a high-profile corner in town is going to do nothing but attract people to sit on it and smoke and create a mess. And unless you're going to do something with some concrete underneath it or a concrete walkway to get to it or something, I think it's going to create issues. I also am concerned about the bench being frequented by kids in such close proximity to a deck where there's going to be alcohol served. So I think that bench is going to attract nothing but problems. Even though the idea is good in theory, I don't like it in practice.
Okay.
Just to Mr. Giel, I think one thing we have to recognize as a board that we have a business owner here who's been very successful in town for a long period of time, and he understands what people want. He understands what is necessary to run a successful business. I think this idea of a deck on a corner like this has been successful in lots of other communities. I think it's a good idea. I would point out, though, that there are detractors to this. There are people that don't like the idea that on our most high-profile corner in town, there's going to be people out on a deck drinking 7 nights a week. It doesn't mean that I don't approve of this or that I may not vote for it, but I would just ask you, as you've always done with your businesses, to for lack of a better word, be vigilant and be there, be on premises, take care of problems outside with people, and basically do the things that you've done for all the years that you've been in business with the Cooper Dell before this. I know it's a slightly different type of business, and there are going to be growing pains, but I'm quite confident that with your experience that this can work and that this can be a real benefit to that corner. So I just ask you to take into account and understand that although you're getting very, very positive feedback, I'm hearing it from people, and business is great. There are people that don't necessarily like this idea, and you need to do what you need to do to be sure that this continues to work. And I thank you for the efforts that you're making to make it work. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Rich.
Ray?
I would happen to agree with Mr. Palukas as it relates to the bench out front, especially. I have a question, Joe. Will the balusters and deck railing also be made out of Trex?
No, those were intended to be made out of wood.
Why? Just curious.
Just, the idea was to create that more softer look and feel, you know, and but I mean, I guess we could consider it, certainly. I mean, it's a maintenance-free-ish,
Was it
benefit, so,
50-year life, I think, is what
at
they
least.
advertise, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something we could take under consideration if that was a condition.
So I'm thinking of down-the-road maintenance and
Yeah.
so forth, and the look.
The good thing about that, Ray, too, though, is that you can get the decks and the railing, or the railings and the spindles in black. So it's just the decking material now, which I have here.
I would ask you to consider that,
Okay.
you know, sincerely. The
I don't
last-
believe the plastic materials can be painted black.
That it can be?
It can't.
Trex can.
Yeah, Trex can be painted.
Trex can
Black?
be painted.
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah, I asked specifically to the technical service rep when I got on the phone. Yeah, they recommend a waiting period. I think she said it was like 30 or 60 days to let it acclimate, but then she said you can paint it and it's as good as coming out of the factory. That was her quote.
True. Flower boxes and all that would just be straight wood?
That's in the proposal, yep. But we could do that as well. I mean, if we decide to do the Trex decks, or if that's the recommendation of the board, you know, for pending approval, we would most likely match that material then too. There would be no benefit for us to then change over to wood for the flower boxes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was getting
Yeah.
at. And I'm looking at, you know, down the road, what it would look like on that corner and maintenance and so forth as well. Try to eliminate maintenance. And I realize it's a little bit more expensive up front, but down the road, a lot less.
Yep.
You know, when you really look at it. Deliveries, I have actually seen, John, or Mr. Giel, I have seen deliveries on the Titus Avenue side of the building, the last couple of weeks, as a matter of fact. And to be honest with you, I can't tell you if there was a truck at that time on the Cooper Road side. So that was, you know, as you said, you were trying to coordinate deliveries correctly. Could it be on different days? Could it be smaller trucks? I don't know. I don't know if you've asked your vendors that, et cetera, you know, to make it a little bit more effective. I don't know.
Are you asking that question?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, well, it makes it easier for all of us, since we don't open till 4 o'clock, to have one-day delivery, you know, and that being Wednesday. And like I say, I don't believe that it's interfered with anybody's business around that area. And I may be wrong. However, I know as an owner of Cooper Deli for 30 years, I had 3 times as many deliveries in that parking lot than I have for Titus Tavern, and Titus Tavern is one day, Wednesday. So I think we're minimizing the damage by doing it on one day. And it's in probably a course of, I don't think those trucks will be there more than 40, 50 minutes in a total of the 8 hours that we are open for deliveries that day.
It's just more of a suggestion, John.
Yeah, I prefer, personally,
No.
Ray, I prefer to have it one day, so I'm not over there 3-4 times a week. It makes it a lot easier for all of us, since we're not open till 4 o'clock. If we were open at 10 o'clock in the morning, then we could do it multiple days.
I mean, if, by putting the deck in here, no one's gonna be able to deliver really through Titus anymore unless they park.
Nobody delivers through Titus.
Right.
Everybody
So
delivers through
if-
Cooper
If
Road
you deliver
anyways
through
because of the
Cooper,
ramp.
right, that's where the ramp is. I mean, you're effectively blocking off, except for the deli, which has the back door, and Personal Designs, which has the east side door, so
The
they
trucks
wouldn't,
never
they'd be able
pull
to get
in the
in there.
parking lot.
Right.
They never pull in the parking lot. They either pull in front of 710 Titus Avenue, where there's a little, 11-foot ramp there, the third road there.
But that
area
house
there.
is for sale, right? So you may not have that,
That's my house, yeah.
but you may not have that in the future.
We don't need to worry about that. Because that,
Well, we do need to worry about it, because if the house is, I mean, whoever owns it, doesn't matter. The house is for sale, it may change ownership. and
yeah,
then-
well, it's not going to, but,
Well-
anyways, right now, I don't think deliveries are an issue at all. I really don't believe it's an issue at all. But if it comes to the fact that, I think what you're asking is to make all the deliveries on Cooper Road, then that would not be a problem.
Okay.
We're only
I
have
think
to
that is what
tell
we're
Yeah, no, I'm
probably
just
4 or
saying-
5 other
saying-
vendors.
All I'm saying is that when I did go by, I did see delivery trucks on the Titus Avenue side.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Obviously, that would be eliminated. I'm curious now if we did it all on the one side. And as I said to you, John, before, as I drove by, I didn't see something on a truck on the Cooper side at that time. That's all I'm saying.
I almost
So-
think it's safer to have it deliveries on Titus Avenue instead of Cooper, because Cooper is only a two-lane road there, at that point. I
Yeah,
do
but
get
couldn't they
deliveries
pull
there.
into your parking and deliver?
Those trucks are pretty big. You only have the entrance there on Cooper Road between Cooper Deli and Titus Tavern. It's large enough to deliver. Yes, they do. But some of those semis are pretty large. They have to pull in front and block traffic.
Just something to consider, that's all I was
Yeah.
asking.
If it means passing this, and
Drawing
I wouldn't
says there's
be
20
against-
feet between the ramp and the curb, as long as no one's parked there.
Yeah. We have, trucks do pull in front of Cooper Road, and that's where our deliveries come from, because of the ramp. The ramp is right, the handicap ramp, that's where we do all our deliveries. We never do any deliveries on Titus Avenue. Nothing comes in the front of Titus Avenue. Trucks may be parked on Titus Avenue, but all the deliveries come through Cooper Road.
But you can't deliver by pulling the trucks onto your parking on the Cooper Road side.
Well, you could,
Just ask them to try.
All the Cooper Deli deliveries coming through the back parking lot.
I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is people are concerned with your deliveries now.
Yeah, we could pull the truck in the back parking lot, but that's gonna be more of an inconvenience for people. It's gonna be more of an inconvenience for personal design floors if we're pulling the back. She has a delivery there, Maplewood, that parks there, and I've asked the guy 3 times not to park there, and he pulls right in the back, and that's okay, it's not a big deal, But by taking up that middle parking, I think it's a lot more difficult than parking on Titus Avenue or the Cooper Road. But if it means mandating people to, delivery, we only have 6 deliveries. If it means mandating them to pull in the Cooper Road, we can establish that. That wouldn't be a hard thing to do, that's
I mean,
for
the
sure.
biggest truck you have is the beer truck?
Yeah.
What's the other trucks?
We have 2 liquor trucks. We have
But they're
2
not as
liquor
big as a beer truck, right?
Oh,
there?
no.
So you said you had 6 deliveries. I mean, if we could get
Well,
5.
we have one that's TJ Sheehan and they deliver kegs, and that's a smaller truck too. The larger ones are the Wright Wisner, Lake Beverage, and Rochester Beer and Beverage, the semis normally. So those are the ones.
Okay.
There'll be, no smoking on the deck either, right, John?
Nope.
Correct? They'll be posted and
Nope.
so
Yep.
forth, so someone would
Yep.
have to walk through the facility and then out
Right.
to the Cooper Road side?
With that situation, I think Ray would make it a lot easier to govern the smoking, because once they come in, we know they're coming in to smoke, so we have to direct them. I think eventually people are going to know that they can't smoke there. Unfortunately, we haven't been vigilant enough to get them over to the Cooper Road side, but we're trying.
So at that point, John, if I'm reading this correctly, we have the deck in, I can't even get out to go on the other parking lot. I would still have to walk all the way through the
Right.
building and around,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So there wouldn't be any smoking, for example, in front of the security door or the florist shop at all? Unless somebody
Unless they
really
went out
walked
the
all
front
the way,
way.
right?
Yeah.
Okay,
There's still a door,
okay.
right? There's still a Titus Avenue door,
I know.
but it's not onto the deck.
I thought there wasn't.
No.
No, I thought this is this, depending on which way it goes, right? Because we have several different, am I wrong?
The deck is completely enclosed. The only way to get to it is from inside.
Right.
Right.
Just to
a quick
clarify.
question, yeah,
You've
that's
still
a good
got
point.
2 sources of ingress and egress.
That's correct.
One on the Cooper Road side, one on the Titus Avenue side.
That's correct.
But the Titus Avenue door does not open onto the deck. You have to enter into the establishment and then get onto the deck from the westernmost set of doors that are inside.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
So people still, not, so that you aren't misled, people still can exit from the establishment onto the Titus Avenue. They can exit
Titus
south,
Avenue side,
so
okay.
there would still be some traffic there. And that's what you're suggesting more vigilance toward.
Exactly, right.
One last quick question, and it happened in my home, so it's probably more for Mr. Riesenberger. You talked about mulch being compacted and so forth. Are you using natural wood mulch, or are you using like that rubber mulch?
It's hardwood mulch, and it's probably a color enhanced, meaning a dyed mulch.
Would it, because that area is very windy and so forth. And believe me, I've seen in windy areas where the mulch, as much as we try to compact it, can blow around and so forth.
Sure.
Would the rubber be better? Just curious, Jeff. It's your
Rubber's
business.
not really a great alternative for around plants. It's not natural. It does kind of smell like old tires when it gets hot. It doesn't really hold the moisture. It's good for a little decorative area and stuff like that, but as far as a commercial area, I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay, just curious. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Ray?
No, thank you.
Bernie?
I guess, Mr. O'Reilly, I just had a couple questions. I thought all those points you brought up were excellent points, but did people actually submit concerns about those that we saw?
I think there was 1 or 2 letters.
I never got to see those letters. Did anybody else, or did I miss them?
I'm not sure there were letters. Were there letters?
I had a.
If there were letters, they should have been submitted to us.
I had a correspondence. It really wasn't signed, so maybe it wasn't sent to everybody. But there
Because I was going to say,
concern.
I didn't see any of these brought, I think they're all great points.
Tell you
but-
in no uncertain terms, if a letter was formally sent in, it would have been forwarded to all of you. I just had some concerns that were typed out.
But for the
and
record,
given to me.
nobody's really submitted
No,
any
apparently
formal
not.
concerns. Okay, I just wanted to say. The only thing I wanted to say is I think the corner looks great compared to what it used to look like, and I think that this deck is just going to add to the area, so.
Thank you.
I think it's great. And I think the owners are showing that they're concerned, especially when they addressed all these issues, so I think it's heading in the right direction.
I don't think I have anything to add at this time.
Okay.
Until I hear public input.
Okay.
Anything else from the board? Seeing none, we'll now open it to public input. Anyone wishing to speak with regards to this application may do so at this time.
No, you're fine.
If you wanted to reference
You're,
it, you could.
you're fine.
We are in receipt, if you're going to address the HIP letter, but you don't need to read it, recite it back. We can, if you could just summarize it, if you will.
Okay. Good evening, Jeff Goldblatt, 128 Parkside Crescent. I am a co-founder and co-chair of Helping Around Quite Plan for Progress, the HIP organization, now in our 15th year of success. I know board members received our comments. I will just address them in bullet point form. I did want to add one item because of the compressed time schedule we had in responding to this. Let's see, 4 on this side. Jay, if you'd be good enough to take one and pass that along.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
This is an add-on to what we submitted last week, and in regards to the, well, I'll just go through this in bullet point form. We addressed the construction of the deck, and in pulling through my ever-trusty construction file, I came up, there's a number of different companies besides Trex that manufacture recycled plastic lumber. One I happen to have, which is from Bedford Technologies. They have a product called FiberForce, and they manufacture black plastic lumber, and interestingly, and as we included in our comments, also has fiberglass mixed in as well, so it's a good, strong product, if any of you want to take a look at that for a moment. So there is, and there's, in fact, just as I was preparing comments last week, one of the magazines I get is Resource Recycling, and there's a firm that has just started up that is now making plastic lumber to look like redwood. So there's a number of different companies that manufacture that product. Trex is the most well-known, but there are others. So in terms of this particular decking construction, this particular firm, and we have no ties with them, just something that came over the transom, does have black, and there may be other firms that have black plastic lumber as well. The deck lighting we're fine with, as long as it is good and taut and doesn't start to droop. What was shown in the application is certainly fine. The deck furniture, I was trying to find, and again, in the compressed time of getting this done, There is a firm called Cascade, and if I can find that, I'll make sure that Mr. Giel gets it, that has some very attractive recycled furniture, components, tables, benches, chairs, and whatnot. There are quite a number of these firms around. The landscaping is where we have a concern, and what I handed out is an alternative. Well, oftentimes, commercial projects will come in with not enough landscaping. In this case, while very attractive, we actually have something that, in our opinion, is too much of a good thing. The planter boxes around the deck are fine, and they certainly complement the facade of the building, which we think is superior to what was there before. That's not an argument in our opinion. But the mulch bed we have a concern with, as many of you know. We've had both hanging baskets that we hope to bring back someday, as well as planters on the south side of Titus Avenue. And Titus Avenue is a wind tunnel, and it's not inconceivable that no matter how well, and we're certainly familiar with Mr. Riesenberger's work as well, he does excellent work, it's going to be a problem. In fact, to the point, just to use an example, we had a wreath hanging up that is part of the holiday decorations that we put up, that Mother Nature managed to blow away, and we think it's in Irondequoit Bay someplace, but we haven't sent divers down to find it. I mean, sometimes if Mother Nature gets going, the winds literally are that strong. We've never found it since. And instead, and what I've just handed out to the board is what we think is a better and simpler alternative to the mulch bed, and that is lighted bollards. Unfortunately, our little budget does not allow for four-color copying, but I indicated the one that is closest to the accent trim on the southern elevation of the building. Two on either side of the deck, two on the west side of the deck, two on the east side of the deck, would serve the purpose, which is to keep cars from driving around the deck. We think it's a simpler and cleaner solution to this. What has been presented in the packet is very attractive, and something that we would certainly like to see at another location at another time. In our opinion, we think it's just a little bit too much for this particular location and would detract from the very excellent look that already is there, just in terms of the facade. The site plan, there is still the issue which we've discussed before about the bike racks, and that's just a clerical thing that does need to be tightened up once it's done. One is marked proposed, the other is not there. The bike racks have been successfully relocated. They're still being utilized successfully, but their proper location does need to be noted on the final site plan. While it was not part of the materials that, and I would agree with the comment that was made that it was a very complete presentation that Mr. O'Donnell put together, but since parking and traffic was discussed earlier, the one thing that also is a new element that's going to come into the picture shortly is the activity that's going to start to take place across the street. You're going to now have the introduction into the Cooper Titus area of earth movers, dump trucks, tractor trailers delivering piping for all the underground utilities, sewers, things, water mains, things of that nature. So that, along with all the other traffic that passes through this intersection, fire trucks, garbage trucks, regular cars, etc., that's the other element that's now going to become a way of life, according to the developers, starting most any time. So in terms of the deliveries and so forth, that's an extra part of the dance that now needs to be considered by this board, along with Mr. Giel, going forward, which has not been the case in the past, but now is going to become reality. So that's just one little point that we bring up as far as the parking and the traffic is concerned. Those are the basic points we raised in what we've submitted. Does the board have any questions of based on what we've turned in?
I'm actually just looking for a clarification. Am I misunderstanding you, or are you suggesting that the entire landscape plan should be scrapped for these bollards?
Yes.
Okay.
We have the planters around the decking is fine, and making go along with the facade of the building is fine. It's our opinion, based on our experience on Titus Avenue, it's a visually too much. We understand the purpose of it, perfectly understandable. But in terms of achieving the goal of keeping traffic from driving around that deck, it's our opinion that 4 bollards on either side, lit so they can be seen, especially in the dark of night, would achieve the same goal in a cleaner and simpler fashion. And I'm sure at some point, something else is going to come up, and, we may very well come back and reference this particular landscape design for some other project. It's certainly attractive, and I'm sure that Arundecoit Landscape would do a fine job of installing it. But along with the points that were made earlier, our concern is the appearance and just the fact that, given how strong the wind does blow through there, that could become an issue. And we don't feel that's, while well-designed and nice-looking, is not necessarily the best place for it. So that's why, and that's why I'm giving you the ballot information now. I didn't have time to pull this together last week, so you have that now, and my apologies for that not being in color, but I did note who the supplier is, and there are a number of different companies that manufacture these. Any other questions? If not, that is my message. Thank you.
Peter, may I say something? Okay. Tomorrow morning, there's a pre-construction meeting for I-Squared, so I will make it very clear to the developers of I-Squared that all their deliveries of manholes, sewer pipe, stone, they need to be very careful about impacting the businesses of Cooper, Hudson, Titus with their deliveries. So that'll be in the minutes from the pre-construction meeting, not just the Titus Tavern or the businesses on this corner, but all the businesses in that business district. And then another observation was that we're trying to green up our tree lawns, and maybe later Jeff Riesenberger or Joe could address substituting grass turf with just mulching beds around the plant material, and whether that would be more suitable for gale force winds on Titus Avenue.
We wouldn't, if we planted some decorative trees, we wouldn't really have a visual impact to traffic, I wouldn't think, with the setback that they were there.
No, not at all. I mean, it's really
So if we went with a landscape and,
if you went with a landscape and some street trees like flowering crab, which would do fine in that environment, it would be no different than the tree lawns on Titus Avenue up in east and west from this location, or any other front lawn on Titus Avenue near the street.
Yeah, I understand HIP's
Well,
concerns
wait.
with it, but I think that greening that area up, it's just too much asphalt and cement between the road there, and I like the idea of having something in that area.
yeah, I agree, but let's move it on to other public input. We'll talk about that more. Would anyone else like to speak with regards to this application?
Hi, I'm Michelle Myers. I live at 27 Hedgegarth Drive. I've never done this before, so I wasn't sure how to go about my concerns. My backyard backs up to 710, I believe, Titus Avenue, so I have concerns about the noise. I was wondering if it was going to be an enclosed deck?
No.
And if there was going to be any music out on the deck. I have a young child. We do like to be in the backyard often. We do have nighttime fires and things like that, and I was just concerned about the noise that this deck may pose to that, as well as like I've heard already, the bar behavior that may be in the parking lots. I know I get some debris from some of the patrons from the deli already on my property, so I'm just concerned about that as well, from having that outdoor facility. So those are some of my concerns.
We'll have the applicant address that once public input's closed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak with regards to this application?
Richard Barone, 154 Hallwood Drive. I live about 4 blocks from this location. lived in this town for 47 years. I think this is the biggest mistake this planning board could ever do for this town, because you would be setting a precedent for every other business like this to put a deck in front of the building. Can I put a deck in front of my house? I don't think so. This will be an eyesore. The history in this town for planters is terrible. Several businesses in this town have done the planters because the planning board required them. And I was on this planning board when we required it for tops. And you know what happens to it? It goes in disrepair. It becomes a litter collector. And the fact that the applicant has addressed issues has not indicated that he has solved the issues. I don't like that word, he's addressed it. That's not solving the problems. There is a major parking problem here, gentlemen. If you take the code, unfortunately, the code cannot be applied to every situation exactly the way it's written. Example, let's say you have one parking space for every 2 seats. Well, that works in a church. Why? Very simple. We have a lot of couples going into a church, and based upon my experience anyways. So you got 2 people in a car. So one parking space for every, or rather, for every 2 seats makes sense. It doesn't make sense in a bar. Every bar I've ever been in, you see very few couples. You see couples, don't get me wrong, I've been one of the couples, but not like you see in a church. So that formula of one parking space for every 2 seats cannot be applied the way the law or code reads. And I remember being on this board when we had to change that. Sometimes we increased the parking spaces, sometimes we decreased them, and maybe banked the parking spaces. So you got a major parking problem. It is difficult to drive. I've driven in that area when the pizza shop was there, for example. Now, true, I got a car that's not a small one, but it is difficult if you got other cars there. The other problem you're going to have with parkers is you will find people not parking within the lines for various reasons. They can't judge the car, for example, or you get these people with special cars, maybe a Corvette or whatever, and they don't want to park in between the lines. They want to park so no other car gets within 5 feet of their car. So taking up 2 spaces. So the fact that you got 23 spaces there, and I think 51 seats, is a disaster to come. So my recommendation is this. You decrease the number of seats in the restaurant or on that deck. If I had my druthers, I would say you should turn down the whole thing. Who wants a potential eyesore right in the middle of town? And are you ready to approve something like this for other locations? Example, you had Walgreens approved for a flashing message sign at Culver and Ridge Road. And you got the other Walgreens. We're going to have flashing lights on all the businesses. How do you say no to one business and approve another one? You can't. So my recommendation is you turn this down. The operator has done a great job with he's had in the past, but again, he hasn't had experience in this type of situation. So you have to look at this a little differently. But if you do approve it, I think you need to cut down the occupancy of the number of seats to something more reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Going once? Twice? Close the public input portion of the meeting. I mean, the parking in Muck is based on square footage. Just to address Mr. Barone's, as I'm reading the Muck district, for non-residential use, the minimum off-street parking requirement for all permitted non-residential uses shall be 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area, but no less, than 2 per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area with bonuses. So, and then they also promote common or public parking throughout the district. I know that there's some issues with common parking in that area right now, but if you look at the square footage basis, that building is currently, rough numbers, 5,800 square feet, which equates to 18 parking stalls, of which there's 27 on site.
And I've been looking at the next door property. It appears that they could add between 4 and 6 next door, which would give them between a 14 and 22% increase.
So right now, it seems that they are compliant. I know when we look at restaurants with outdoor seating, I'm not sure about the Muck District because it's not really applied in the Muck District, but outdoor seating does not increase their overall parking count due to those seats.
And we had the same situation at Primo's and Seabreeze, and as long as they didn't, and the same thing with Shamrock Jack, as long as they don't exceed 20 tables outside, then their parking requirement is not required to be increased.
And then the other thing, I would guess, if we could take this as square footage, it's another 400 square feet, which, is 3 per 1,000.
So it's 3 point something, two spaces, but the other thing is that
And there's a surplus of parking on site as it is, unfortunately, according to the code. I know it's not in reality, but according to the code.
Right. The other thing is that the deck is let's say, a seasonal use, and we would hope that people would walk, or we're promoting, the reason for Muck is promoting a walkable community, and that during the warmer months, that people will be walking to the Cooper Hudson Titus area. Also, if you recall, we encouraged, and my recollection is that with Mike's building number 1 and Merce relocating down there, that there was a great discussion about outdoor seating, similar to the areas of the city that promote that, like Park Avenue. Is that correct recollection of getting people outside, not just all bottled up and in?
I think you said 20 tables, you mean 20 seats, right?
Yes, 20 seats, I'm sorry.
You said 20 tables.
And they've got, I think, 5 times 4.
You keep mentioning the parking at the other building. I'm not as familiar. That's on Cooper or Titus?
That is the house immediately to the east, which is owned by John Giel.
It's labeled as 690 on the site plan that we have, but I believe it's 610. 710.
It's the house on Titus immediately to the east, and that's actually where the dumpster enclosure is. And there's some gates, and I was doing a little sketching as to how many parking spaces they could put into the backyard there to increase the parking.
So that's not part of this application?
No, but it's something that they're looking at now. He did mention Bob Kiefer taking a look at it.
Would you like to address any, John,
Thank you, Joe O'Donnell again.
from the public?
What's that?
Just address the input
Yes.
from the public that we received.
I'll start off first with the young lady's comments about the music and whether the porch was enclosed. The porch is not enclosed. It's an open railing, open porch, I should say, deck. The music is strictly, there is wiring for just a couple speakers up on the front facade, but it would not be any live music or anything of that would project sound where I understand her location is. It would just be more of a background music, if that. Second of all, I'd just like to thank the HIP people for their suggestions. I think a lot of them are very good, especially relative to products that are available out there. And we'll certainly take into account. I think any of these suggestions that we take would only help our own situation. And I also like to, not to get off on a tangent on that, but I also think that some of the concerns that have been brought up tonight, operationally, it's only in the best interest of the owner to improve those, to improve the business, to improve the attractiveness of it. And I know the parking is going to take a little bit of time to pull together because of all of the engineering and possible legal hurdles that have to be crossed. But just back to the HIP letter, I think that they're pretty much in agreement with what we've proposed, other than the landscaping. And in talking to John just briefly there during the public input, I think we'd be willing to go back and look at the bollards if the board would like that. I know one member had said
I'm not
no.
sure that I agree with what any, the
Okay,
landscaping recommendations.
I'm just letting you know that we're open to some suggestions, provided that wasn't a deal killer for tonight. If the board felt that I wouldn't want to be sent back for something that we've been working on for so long, but I do appreciate their comments on that. And also, as far as the bike rack, I apologize. It was just something I didn't think was a part of the application today relative to the bike rack. I actually thought they were all put back in the spaces and the spots that they were told, so we'll address that, and I can always update the plan, no problem. Finally, I think the board addressed Mr. Barone's concerns quite adequately relative to the parking. I mean, it's a function of what the town's master plan is trying to accomplish, which is a pedestrian-friendly streetscape. Yeah, I know I wouldn't want a deck in my front yard either, but this is more of a social gathering spot than a private spot, which is why, decks are in people's backyards. I also like to address the idea of precedent setting. I think the board always takes every case on its own merit, and that one case does not set a precedent. Each case has to be judged and reviewed under its own merits, and I think that in this case, this is a good precedent-setting application and project. So, but I do understand that some people do perceive, but if a board is diligent, like I believe this board is and has been, precedent-setting, it should not be part of the equation, because it's based on the merit of every case. So, with that, I don't think I have anything to add. John, do you? Okay.
I guess I'm going to pipe in with my comments now. I've been looking at this, and, at one point, you came in with a patio, and now we've kind of morphed it into a patio that's made out of wood, and we're kind of calling it a deck now. I mean, one of the things I am concerned about is, and I don't disagree with some of the comments, I guess I'd like to see maybe a little bit more of a permanent aspect to it. By maybe, if you would, my opinion is adding some brick piers at the corners of it to give it a little bit more of that classic look to it, introducing a little bit more masonry, not by going to any great extent that you would or did propose with the patio, where you had a concrete. And I would also like to see, I think maybe the landscaping more squared off rather than the curve. I think the curve is going to be difficult to cut in the asphalt, and I don't think it creates the urban landscape environment or semi-urban or suburban, semi-urban, which this is, environment. I do agree, and I didn't really think about it until Larry mentioned it, that a grass lawn with a couple of trees might be more appropriate there and easier to maintain. The trees could be very attractive. You could add some lights in like on Park Avenue where it's very nice at
especially on
night, or
holidays,
East
yeah.
Avenue, Holiday, things like that. That would be very simple. I go back and forth on the bench, but if you do want to include the bench, I think it needs to be more, maybe closer to the sidewalk and maybe in a field of brick that would match the brick pavers that are out by the road. I don't think it has to be anything complicated. It's maybe a 4x6 or 7 area with a, whatever the 2x5, bench within it. But I think if you squared off that landscaping, maybe coming off of the east corner, go straight forward rather than the arc, and then coming off the west corner, and that would be perpendicular to the other one, so it kind of goes,
Yeah, squares it off.
squares it off.
Everything in that area is like 90-degree angles anyway, so that's
And it might be easier to keep it clean if
Yeah.
people spill things over, napkins or, God forbid, cigarette butts or things, whatever land in there, easier with grass. I don't know, they could be in some sort of a, tree surround of something. I don't know, Jeff, maybe you have some ideas. But I guess I would like to consider at least some masonry piers at the corner, maybe of the yellow brick or something that would match the building, which kind of picks up your gold.
The two front corners?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, is that what you're referring to?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, with a simple, just stone or precast cap. And it just might bring a little bit more permanence to it, a little bit more relationship to the existing building, and it gets us a little closer to a patio made out of wood than a deck.
Okay.
I do think you could tuck also those 3x3 planters that are on the west side more into that alcove.
Okay.
Get it more, less out of the, it seems like they might be a little far out.
Oh, okay. Closer to the corner, they may be coming off the corner of 45 to the center line of those,
Yeah.
something like that? Okay.
And that would be my only comments. I think that I was a little bit concerned about the landscaping, that it does seem a little fussy. And I do think that treescape on the street, you know, you go down Park Avenue, magnolias, I mean, I know that's in a tree lawn on a sidewalk, but I think that you're creating more of that tree lawn environment, which is similar to what they're doing at I Square, although that's in a, you know, in a tree.
Was it a grate?
Well, in a grate, in a
box.
in a sidewalk, but I mean, it's still creating you're creating a tree lawn type of situation. And I mean, I was even looking at it, maybe, you know, I know you can only put 20 seats on there, but, you know, I'm, you know, making the deck even bigger, but, or the wood patio. But I think that what you have is probably what you need. I don't think you need to make it any bigger. I like that, in general, I just think I would like to see a little bit of masonry accent that kind of ties it into a little bit more of the building.
Okay.
And I think it's still in keeping. It's not necessarily that much more expensive.
No, if we're only talking a couple of them, I'm sure I can come up with a detail that will be satisfactory. I mean, this,
And I understand everyone's concerned about the parking, and I think we are all concerned, and I know that the owner's working to address the parking situation, but unfortunately, he's a victim of his own success in this case. And, you know, I mean, parking is somewhat self-regulating, and he needs to manage it. And the parking regulations are such that communal parking is, you know, unfortunately, the way that this district is written into. And I think the operational issues, I think everyone's bringing them to light is great. I think, John, I appreciate you wanting to address them. And, I mean, I think other than that, you've really addressed what our concerns are at this point, at least my concerns are. And I wasn't quite sure until, I'll open it up to the other parts of the board and their opinion, but until Larry mentioned it, I wasn't really, I do agree with some of the landscape concerns. And, you know, a landscape, I understand you gotta mow it and things like that out there, but, I mean, you're gonna have to maintain the mulch and the plants and watering and all that stuff. It might be a little simpler in the long run, even though you have to mow it. What did you say, John?
You got to mow 710, right?
Yeah.
Just push the mower across the parking lot.
I guess I'd want more specifics, though, I mean, I know you got some good suggestions there. I mean, are we planning on keeping the boulders as we had asked for them?
I don't know that I think that if he gets a couple of masonry piers, it provides the aspect of, I don't know that the boulders add anything in this case. You know, I think he's got the planter boxes out in a area that, I mean, if somebody does drive through there, they're gonna be grabbing a, planter box that's full of,
I think the peers addressed the issue that why we had the boulders in the first place.
and I think that we could pick and choose. I think there was there a tree in there proposed?
yeah.
There's actually 3 trees already in it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add, I've spoke with John again during the public input on that, and if it helps the board feel a little more comfortable, we'd be willing to table just the landscaping and let us come back next month with just another landscaping plan, but move forward with the deck itself.
I think if we can make some modifications to the landscaping plan, we could get it worked out.
Well, that's great. I just want to
I think
leave
you
that
already have the
open, that
plans.
we're willing to do that.
Jeff, maybe you could just come up for a minute and talk a little bit about the trees and, I mean,
Mr. Owl, I don't know about the rest of the board, but I'm not comfortable doing that. I'd like to see a plan in front of me before I decide whether or not we want to do that tonight.
well, let's talk about it a little bit more anyways and see if we can't get resolution on what.
Well, I also have, the other concern I had is I didn't realize there was gonna be any music outside in there. Even though this is facing the road, it is part of a neighborhood, and I didn't realize there was gonna be any amplified music at all out there. It's not on any of the plans anyplace, so I'm concerned about that too. and I'm concerned about, I don't know if we have any, if there's any regulations about keeping the doors open, just in case, how often the doors can be wedged open or not. But there are neighbors that are, just to the north of here that we need to be aware of.
Well, I think the building blocks, most of the noise from the north, if the doors are open, you're going to be addressing Cooper, I think, and Titus intersection.
Maybe. Like the wind, it blows around there, though. I'm not sure that it doesn't get loud over. I don't live on Hedgegar, so I don't know if it's loud over there, but that's something we should maybe address as well.
We don't have a separate ordinance regarding music distribution at a restaurant or entertainment outside. I've been involved in Charlotte, the city of Rochester does, so it caused me to think about this. We do have a noise ordinance, and the noise ordinance would have to be applied with.
There are times in my house I can hear the football stadium.
I'll jump in a bit. What I think I heard was you were talking about 2 speakers on the facade that would be pushing sound southward, washing over the deck, going towards Titus Avenue. Okay? I just did a quick scale to the back property line. It's 150 feet, more or less. So your physics would be that sound level would have to propagate and somehow bend itself around the building to flow to the northeast, or it would have to go across the street, bounce off whatever buildings Mike Nolan's built, and then bounce back. But in any event, it would cross the property line at the Titus right-of-way, which is where our sound ordinance would kick in, as to how many decibels you could actually push over your property line. So it can't be that loud, because I'd be able to go there with a dB meter, stand on the front walk, and say you got to turn down the amp, or, turn down your little stereo. So that's that.
My experience of sound is very much a wave pattern. I would agree that it comes out in a wave pattern, and it needs to reflect off and then return. But
I think it's good to talk about, but
yep, I agree.
Get it out there.
Do we have a tree that you could suggest?
Possibly like a coral burst crab tree, which is a dwarf crab tree. It would only get 8 feet tall at the most. There's other kinds of crab trees that would get in the, 13 to 15 feet high range, but I think the dwarf coral burst crab would be the best option for that area. Small, compact. Its width would probably only be 6 to 8 feet wide, so it's about the most dwarf tree you could possibly put in the area.
Do you think you could fit 3 in there, left, center, right?
Oh yeah, because they're relatively small.
Right, that's my point. You have the Divine Trilogy, essentially, and then you could do some small plantings in the summer of whatever around the base if they wanted to.
Sure.
They wanted to flower it up, or,
I also think it's a good idea to keep the boxwood that are along the rail. I think that takes out some of that wide open view that we're trying to stay away from. Didn't know what anybody else thought of that, but I like the boxwood along the rail.
Yeah, I'm sure the owners are flexible to whatever you recommend, and
Maybe we could do like a little 3 foot wide hedgerow with the boxwoods in it, and then the rest be grass,
sure,
turf.
with the dwarf crab trees as well.
Project just got cheaper for you, John.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff.
Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Bernie, questions, concerns, comments?
Nope, I'm all set.
Jay?
I brought up my concerns, and I still think they're valid, so.
Rich?
I'm all set.
Ray?
You know, I realize what the code is, but I also realize that there's 4 businesses in there as it relates to parking. And there's a practicality. So what will happen is, if the parking doesn't work, and it's for a particular business, some business may go out. And I think, that, again, we have to consider it practically, as well as, you know, within the code.
So you're saying we should enforce a regulation that's not contained within the code or
No, I'm
level of
just saying,
standard?
I'm just saying that I think it has to be considered. I mean, you can go by the strict.
Well, what do you mean by considered?
We can go by you can go exactly by the code, or we could have better understanding. Is he going to put it in at 7:10? I mean, we could make that a part of the program here this evening. It's somebody could go out of business there with that, and it's difficult. I think they've done a great job. Don't get me wrong. I think it's magnificent. I think they've been very amenable to it. Just an opinion. That's my concern.
I don't do it often, but there is case law that suggests that your review is limited to the elements that are contained in Section 274A. And one of the bullets of 274A is planning, and then I believe you would be required to follow the legislation of the town, which then goes to the Muck District, which enumerates the parking. So the case law says you have to follow only the element that's Moriarty versus the Planning Board of Sloatsburg, wherever that is. And that says you have to follow the elements, and the elements say you have to, one of the key points is parking. Parking then reverts back to the Muck District, and we reviewed the parking requirements there. So as a matter of law, I understand your concern, and again, I'm only passing on my analysis of the law. I think you have to follow the statute as written.
I mean, I have a really hard time with making an applicant go. I mean, the parking ordinance is the way it's written for a district, and now we're going to ask them, because they're building a deck, that they need to go and add more parking than what is required. I mean, they have more parking than what is required, and the spirit of that district is that there's a cooperative parking environment in the neighborhood there, and there is. I know you don't have an agreement with, but, I mean, I don't see how that we can make that leap.
I understand. I'm just saying it is a concern to me.
I mean,
Down the
parking is
road.
absolutely a concern.
Yeah, I mean, and we both know it. I mean,
And the evidence, unfortunately, is such that I understand their business is beyond successful where the parking exceeds capacity, but the ordinance is such that the parking that is required for that area is met and exceeded. Even if we consider the deck as part of the square footage of the space, it still is exceeding it by one.
Can we clarify the parking? I think it was back at the, I don't remember which meeting, October. You said that the employees park off-site at the dentist's office, so I think that's been forgotten in the discussion, that there is other parking. Could you just confirm that?
Yeah, our employees do park over at the dentist office. We have a signed letter from Tim Thomas. None of our employees ever park in our parking lot at all. Not one. And as far as the hours, we don't open till 4 o'clock. And so obviously the trouble hours are between 4 and 7 when the Cooper Deli is still open. So basically the Cooper Deli is open from 7 to 7, which is 12 hours. 9 hours they have free parking. We don't have a person in that parking lot. Personal Design Floor is pretty much the same thing. They're from 9 to 6, and they have 7 hours of open parking. We are trying our best, and we know when we applied for this and started this whole process, our expectations were very high that this was going to be successful. I think we've exceeded expectations to the point where it is a problem, and we've been trying to address that, and we will address that problem. Fortunately, we do own the house on Titus Avenue, and I'm trying to get a meeting with Larry this week and Mary Joyce and bring some plans that Bob Kiefer has set up for us to rectify the situation. I mean, I'm not so excited myself of being over there Friday at 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock watching the parking spots, you know. I'd like to remedy that situation as soon as possible, and we're not absentee owners, you know. We are there, and we're trying to be neighbor-friendly, and I believe we've done the best we can. We've purchased the signs ourselves, we put them up, we've paid for everything, we've policed it. Once this weather breaks, and once we do get the ability to possibly extend our parking lot, I think that parking issue will be gone by the road. As far as the noise issue on Hedgegarth, we live on 710 Titus Avenue. We have problems with MRFs occasionally at night, Friday or Saturday night, whatever, when our windows open. It's not a major issue. It happens maybe a couple, 3 times a month where, you know, people are out there smoking and they're yelling, and, you know, you live with it. It's a business. And I don't believe our patio or deck is ever going to, the noise will, I hope it never travels to Hedgegarth, because, like you say, we have the building to block it. That noise is going to project. The only people that will maybe be affected by it would be the apartments over there behind, but that is quite a distance to be affected
I think the
by.
parking is probably the more problem for the noise. People get into their car going, hey, you know, see you later, blah, 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 bye, we had a great time. You know, and that's near their property line, and that's going to be difficult to enforce.
Right.
I don't think that the noise from your deck, per se, in my professional opinion, based on my experience, is going to be the one that's causing Hedgegarth the problem.
Well, I agree, and that has been there ever since, and I think, what's her name, Michelle? She never mentioned anything about that. I think her concern was the patio being outside. So had it been a concern of hers, I think it would have been mentioned when she was up here. But I myself, I'm not a professional loud noise person, but I don't believe that stereo out front or 15, 20 people, the noise is going to carry over to Michelle. And obviously, if that does happen, we will hear about it, you know, and
I mean, sound is very much like the light from a flashlight. When you have a
goes
speaker, it shines out.
one direction.
Right, like the
Right.
light of a flashlight would, if you imagine that analogy. But that sound will reflect off of hard surfaces. So, I mean, the only thing that would potentially happen is if you had speakers on very loud, it could transfer across the street, reflect off a hard surface, and come back, but it's going to be diminishing continually.
Yeah,
while
that's
it-
quite a distance. So I hope for Michelle that it doesn't happen.
The speakers have some controls to get more road.
I mean, I feel like I understand Jay's concern about the landscape plan, but one thing that we have done in the past is that an applicant would be required to send a plan back in, which I could review to make sure that it's compliant with our intents, if people are willing to accept that. Everyone's got their heads down, no one's.
Well, I'm not, I'd like to see the plan, and we don't, the fact that we required, I know it's a different size and scope and everything else, but we required, one of the concerns we had with I-Square, they didn't have stamped drawings. And now we're saying that across the street, it's okay not to have stamped drawings as part of the plan. I think we need to be, if nothing else, consistent with stuff like that. And, I mean, it would be fine for preliminary, in my mind, fine for preliminary site plan approval for what we have right now. I'm not comfortable with final site plan approval tonight. And that's how I feel about this.
So your opinion would be preliminary, you'd be comfortable with. Rich, how far do you feel?
If the plans are not going to be different, the only difference is going to be a stamp. I don't have any problem with it being something that's administrative with the planning board chair.
What about review of the landscaping in some of these modifications?
I think we've sufficiently hashed it out that we've made it clear what we as a board want, and again, I think that's something that can be resolved. And resolved by a submission of a revised plan to you.
That I could review. Ray?
I happen to agree with Mr. Ritchie. I think there has to be some consistency, as much as I would like to see the program move forward with the,
Well, at this point, being that we would need 4 members to give preliminary and final, my opinion, I would be willing to give final, but to say they would not, we could only give preliminary tonight. with a motion. And Bernie, unfortunately, you're last, and your opinion is
Doesn't matter.
valid, but unfortunately superfluous. I would be, I think, comfortable giving them preliminary and final. I think the modifications are minor, but,
I'm okay with giving preliminary and final too. I think if we're gonna be that strict about the drawings, which I think is a very valid point, we shouldn't even review it if they don't have stamps in the future then. We should make that a rule, in my opinion. Otherwise, we're gonna be in the same situation again.
Just so that you understand, the law is that this board is empowered to pass an application subject to a future condition. So I interpret, if the submission of the drawings has been made and they are not going to be in any way altered, only added with the stamp, that would comply with the future condition component of the law.
got your stamp in the car?
I tell you, if I don't, but had I known, I could have run home and got it.
You've still got a consideration with regard to the landscape component. And you've got a quorum, but the law also, well, I can't imagine I know all this law. But it requires that your vote is based upon a fully empowered board, not just the quorum present. So, if two board members aren't going to move forward, then you would not have a fully empowered board voting.
I'm shocked, that's all.
Larry, do we need to do seeker on this? They presented the patio the first time, and we did.
They presented the patio the first time, and you did seeker, and there was a seeker form submitted for this, so you could do seeker tonight if you'd like to do it a second time.
I mean,
It's no.
I do not think it's,
Okay.
you should do it.
I don't think we should do it a second time if we've already done it
Already
once.
done secret.
It's already been done.
So Jay and Ray, want to make this applicant come before us again, just to review the landscape plan and provide stamp plans, that's correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Ray?
That is correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the Muck District is something that we've said is kind of a different animal too, and we're gonna have additional applications in front of us, and if we're not consistent with at least having stamped drawings, I'm concerned that we're gonna have some,
Well, they're prepared by a
Well, yeah.
licensed engineer, I think or architect, excuse me, I agree that the stamp is formally required, I know we made it an issue before, but there were other issues, that was one of them, they're prepared by a licensed architect.
Mr. Chair, can I make it one?
Stamping's not the issue, though, because,
Yeah, I know. Well, the only thing
because one of
about the-
two issues with the two of
Right.
them, and they don't want to do it
The
either
only,
back off on
the only
either.
reason why I'm so perplexed about this is that the landscaping was something that we as a team worked out, and a change came in tonight. A suggestion came in tonight, and we're being penalized for that. That's the only point I want to make about the landscaping.
Mr. O'Donnell,
The stamp.
the plan came in, if we had have reviewed the actual plan at the workshop 2 weeks ago, then it may have been a different discussion that we're having tonight, but we didn't, and that would have been one of the things that I picked up at that point.
But
So, to
the-
say that
the
you've,
package was
landscape plan, I would
submitted
advise.
2 weeks ago, and then a suggestion
it wasn't 2
came.
weeks ago.
A suggestion came up to improve the landscaping, and my client's being penalized a whole month of progress. That's all. I just want to say that we didn't initiate the change in the landscaping, and why to be penalized for it tonight is just a little perplexing. So,
Mr. O'Donnell, in the past, we have requested a variety of things. And what Mr. Ritchie said originally is it relates to consistency, especially in the Muck District.
We're not going to get beyond it, I don't think, then.
We have an obligation as well.
I understand.
I love the program. I think what John has done and Mr. Montroys has done
Should
is
we
fabulous.
can't do final
But there
work.
has to be some level of fairness as well.
I
And
understand.
I would ask you
I'm
to
not-
understand that
We're not, again, I'm not asking for anything unfair. I think the town attorney qualified, or stated it perfectly, which is what happens in almost every planning board. There's approvals with conditions. I mean, I would have to be a mind reader, and everybody would have to be a mind reader to try and hit every idea that comes up tonight by 5 or 6 different people if you don't have the flexibility of approval with conditions. That's all. I mean, what's going to come up next month? That's what the question I have to ask, so.
I personally feel like we should provide final site plan approval, but pending stamp plans and revised. Want to make a motion?
Do we have to do secret for this?
We do not. We've already done seeker.
Okay.
Peter? Michelle is saying that she doesn't believe we did seeker specifically for the patio.
It was included with.
It was included, and then they decided to pull it out of the application.
Okay. Well, we'll go with Counselor Orelli.
I mean, even the proposed plan that was subsequent had the dashed-in thing saying, showing future patio.
I'd like to make one observation, recollection. Approximately a little over a year ago with the I-squared, the engineer of record actually brought up the fact that he didn't feel that at the January meeting they were really ready, and the plans were something he was actually comfortable stamping as a licensed engineer. And that is, of course, the meeting that you were pushed for preliminary final approval when we didn't have the drainage or the traffic report, so we could even close seeker. So that was the situation then, is you had a design professional that wasn't willing to put his seal on the drawing if he had it in his pocket. And in this case, you have a design professional who is in the room and would seal the drawing if his seal was present in the room. And that's just the difference between the two cases. And obviously, planning board can do what they like.
Well, I think even if they had this seal, I think Jay has testified that he wouldn't be.
And I understand, I understand the situation.
The landscape plan.
I'm just saying that the enough said.
I think you need a motion.
I'll make the motion for preliminary regarding. And Joe, I've got a little sketch I want you to take with you.
Yeah, sure, thank you.
All right. Take a motion regarding application number PB 1303-1 upon the matter, I'm going to need this for a second and then I'll give it to you. Upon the matter request by John and Debbie Giel for revised site plan approval to construct an outdoor patio and seating on premises at 690 Titus Avenue in a mixed-use commercial district. With this condition that they have provided us with stamped drawing and revised landscape/site plan as per my markup, which,
We can do that in a workshop, right? It's gotta be.
I don't want to start doing that.
I don't know, Larry, do you need to make a copy of this, or can I just give it to him, or how do you want to do it? Michelle, just,
That, or I can just stop by tomorrow and get it. I'm not gonna, I think my office is closed tonight, so.
is it?
We'll make
All right,
a
well,
copy.
I'll stop by
this
and get it
for
tomorrow.
you.
I appreciate the paperwork.
So motion is by Wayner. Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Second.
Thank you, Bernie. All those in favor?
What are we voting on?
Preliminary.
And it's subject to what?
Stamp drawings.
Stamp
and-
drawing, revised landscape plan/site plan as per my markup, which we're going to provide them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, you are granted preliminary approval. We will see you next month.
Thank you. Do you know that?
April 22nd, I believe,
Okay.
Monday, April 22nd.
I have vacation plans. I wanted to make sure that there wasn't in there, so, okay.
I was hoping we wouldn't have any applications that night because it's my birthday. Tried. Okay. I would like to, before we get through, open it up to our presentation, Does anyone had a chance to look at the meeting minutes that were provided?
I'm going to need more time on the meeting
time?
minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I've gone through about half of them, and I need, I think I'll have them, any amendments done by the workshop.
Very good.
I would like to just clarify with the board members, did you receive the revised November minutes?
Yes.
All of you?
I did as well.
Yes.
You did? Ray?
I believe so, yeah.
It says
Okay.
draft, what do you mean by revised?
Oh, no.
At any rate, we have them right here
I tended to
now.
get off track on them.
So it is draft.
Right.
Oh, okay, I'm good.
No,
This one says revised.
on the corner.
No, I'm not. Thank you.
You want a hard copy, Peter?
Of the revised?
Yeah.
Sure. I will take a hard copy of the revised. Second, yeah. So I don't know if I want to
I
get too
before
mixed up.
he.
I have some at home, but
Yeah, mine doesn't say revised on it.
This one just says draft.
No, it says revised.
Oh, okay. Because I thought some of them had revised stamped right across it. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right too, all right.
So we're just.
All
doing-
right, at this point,
Does Joe want these books back?
a recess?
Why don't we take 10 minutes?
10 minutes. We're going to take 10 minutes.
Let's ask him, because last time we
presentation. We don't need a quorum. We just need to, Larry was going to provide an introduction, but he's not here, and I'm going to begin regardless. And I'm going to allow you to give the introduction.
My pleasure.
All right. We are having a presentation by EDR tonight about the Irondequoit Seneca Trail feasibility study. And maybe you could just give us a little background,
Sure.
introduce the project, and then give us your presentation.
My name's Tom Robinson. I'm a landscape architect and project manager with Environmental Design and Research. We're working on the Irondequoit Seneca Multi-Use Trail feasibility study for the town of Irondequoit. Funding for the project being provided by the Genesee Transportation Council. The project is to assess the feasibility and provide schematic design and cost estimates for a multi-use trail from the north end of the El Camino Trail, which is in Seneca Park, up to Pattonwood Drive and the O'Rourke Bridge. The trail corridor is about 3.6 miles altogether. And what we're after here is to capitalize on the numerous benefits of active transportation and community trails. More and more communities are doing planning, design, and construction of trail systems. So we have a growing network in the region, and we hope that Irondequoit can become part of that. Active transportation and trails give us benefits in the areas of health and wellness for all ages and mobility levels of residents, environmental benefits, and social and economic benefits, adding up to an enhanced quality of life for the town and its residents. Our project area is the right-of-way of the old CXS railway line, about 3.6 miles long. The right-of-way varies in width somewhat, but 50 to 60 feet is a typical width. Right now, it's under ownership by two entities. When we started the project, it was all still owned by CSX right-of-way, but right at the end of 2012, Monroe County, for various reasons, purchased about 60% of our total trail corridor. So at this point, Monroe County owns about 2 miles of the corridor, basically along the Seneca Park lands up to Seneca Park Avenue. So in your package, you'll see that ownership differentiation on the graphics. And then north of there, the rest of the corridor is still owned by CSX. So that's what we're dealing with in terms of property ownership. At this point, we're probably about a little less than halfway through our project. This is supposed to be about a 6 to 8 month time frame. We started late last fall with the town of Irondequoit. We've completed our inventory of existing conditions through a process of on-site reconnaissance and desktop analysis. We produced mapping for the soils, the topography, slope maps, hydrology and drainage, wetlands and water resources, adjacent land use, property ownership. We've assessed in the field the existing conditions of the right-of-way. We have an inventory of existing structures and edge conditions, specifically fencing along the corridor, and existing culverts and drainage structures that were part of the railway system. A couple other things that we inventoried because they're of particular interest to the development of multi-use trails is the consistency and amount of natural surveillance along the corridor, being conscious of personal security and safety issues. Eyes on the trail can be an advantage to us, so we mapped areas that had a lot of natural surveillance and areas that were more isolated and had less natural surveillance on them. As we go forward in the project, there may be some design responses to those areas. If nothing else, it's important to be aware of them, and as we do trail mapping and interpretive signage and provide information to the town, we can include those things. We're also very conscious of adjacent properties and residences close to the trail. So we actually located and mapped any house that was 50 feet or less to the right-of-way, meaning that that's a place where there's a fairly limited and restricted amount of buffer. So those are on our site inventory maps. We mapped 49 residences that fell into that category. The majority of those are south of Pattonwood Drive, and we're developing trail alternatives that would actually move the main trail further away from the residents and provide a better buffer zone.
Sorry, if I could just interrupt, is that the property line is 50 feet from the trail?
No, the house.
The house
The house itself, yeah, yep. So at this point.
Which means that the house was 50 feet from the railroad when it was operating.
Correct. Good point. So the noise conditions won't be any worse.
50 or 15?
50, 50.
Okay.
Yep. So all that information is in the figures we printed out for you. At this point, we've had 2 meetings with the project steering committee, and we've also had 3 meetings with Monroe County Parks to get their ideas on what's going to be acceptable to them in terms of a trail within their property ownership. Monroe County has given us some very good input and feedback that's helping drive our analysis of alternatives. They have not officially reviewed or commented on anything at this point, but we are communicating with them, and they're being very helpful with the concept development. In terms of the concept alternatives, what we're looking at is, first and foremost, safety and sustainability in terms of the trail development. Sustainability is being addressed by looking for alternatives that have low environmental impacts, ease of maintenance in the future, and a simplicity of design, durability of materials, and vandal-resistant features that can be out in fairly isolated areas. User groups that we're targeting are, this trail will be multi-use trail that will be consistent with design guidance given by Federal Highway, New York State DOT, and AASHTO. The user groups we're anticipating being out there would be walking, running, jogging, cross-country skiing, and bicycle use. So with the help of the GTC, we're trying to evaluate this as an active transportation infrastructure piece that would connect different community resources. One of the great values of the trail is that the southern terminus connects with the El Camino Trail, which is a project already built by the city of Rochester, 2.2 miles long. And at the north end, we bump into the Irondequoit Lakeside Trail, which runs along Pattonwood Drive. So the great value of this piece is that it can connect to 2 already existing trail systems and add to the growing regional trail network. We identified some problem areas along the trail in terms of topography and meeting compliance with ADA. Basically, you have a sheet in there that shows some typical cross sections. And when we approached Monroe County, we started with the concept that we would put the whole trail in the CSX right away. The county encouraged us to look at the existing Genesee Riverside Trail. So the trail that's right on the bluff above the river, there's an existing footpath there that basically goes the whole length of the Seneca Parklands. The county preference was to improve the Riverside Trail and make that the main pedestrian thoroughfare through their lands. They want to draw attention and utilize the scenic resources of the river. We saw an advantage to that because we would put most of the traffic away from the residences, private residences, and closer to the river. So we're proceeding on an alternative development that takes their guidance in hand. The problems so far that we see with the improvements of the Riverside Trail is there a handful, 4 or 5 stretches of topography that will prevent us from making the whole stretch ADA compliant. This isn't really a deal breaker. Certain funding sources require ADA compliance, certain funding sources don't. The constructed Genesee Riverway Trail on the west side of the river has the same condition, where a lot of it is paved and ADA compliant, but certain stretches, because of natural conditions, cannot be. So this trail would probably be about equal to that. Basically, as we go through the Seneca Park county lands, the trail develops into 3 parallel strands. with a main pedestrian way right along the riverside up on the bluff. Through the center of the park, we would direct bicyclists to use enhanced park roadway. So we would basically treat the park road as a shared-use roadway, using AASHTO guidance to design that. The park road itself is low volume, limited truck traffic and low speeds, so it really lends itself to shared use. This would help provide bicyclists with people with road bikes to a more comfortable contiguous pathway and help separate the pedestrian and bicycle traffic and reduce some conflicts that we see from time to time on multi-use trails. The third strand would be the existing CSX right-of-way, which would be left as is and function as a neighborhood pathway. We wouldn't dissuade or prohibit use on it. Monroe County at this point intends just to leave it in place so neighbors can use it as a walking path as they are now. All these three strands come together at Seneca Park Avenue, where the county ownership ends, and from there north, the trail would be solely in the CSX right-of-way and would be an improved rails to trails type project. The northern end of the trail terminates, it meets back up with a sidewalk along Thomas Avenue, which brings you to Pattonwood Drive, and a signalized intersection takes you safely across to the Arundecoit Lakeside Trail, which is on the north side of the road. So that's kind of the overall picture of the multi-use trail we're developing. Our schedule moving forward, we'll probably be looking at alternatives and recommendations and schematic cost estimates through the end of April. We expect to have preliminary recommendations, phasing and implementation plan in place by May. We would propose to have the second public meeting, hopefully sometime in June or possibly early summer, and finalize the report in July, which would keep us about on our track to wrap this thing up in between 6 to 8 months. That's a description of the overall project, and happy to take any comments or questions or people's ideas, how to make it better.
Larry, you weren't here when he began. I know you wanted to give a brief introduction, and maybe you could give a
Do that now?
brief conclusion.
Okay. For the board members, audience in the room, and those people that are out watching on television, this is a feasibility study that the town of Arundecoit is doing the project management on for the Genesee Transportation Council to study the feasibility of this 3.6 miles of rail to trail, and the consultant that was retained was EDR, who was very well versed in this. I'm sure you could tell by Tom's presentation. So the outcome of this study will be the feasibility of the trail and essentially the cost estimates, which in the case of the El Camino Trail were then used to pursue the grants to actually make the El Camino Trail reality. This is not a design for bid. This is not going to construction. This is strictly the feasibility, which, and part of the process with GTC is that there needs to be 2 public meetings. This is the first of the public meeting, and we chose the planning board venue because you are the planning board. This is on television. There is already a meeting scheduled tonight. The room is open, and this seemed to be the most appropriate place to have this public meeting.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? Is there gonna, I haven't looked through all these, but is there gonna be additional ingress or opportunities to enter the trail in addition to the spots that are already there on one of the pages here, the one that in the bottom, or it's this one right here. We've got you have demarcated in these large red circles the places where there's already
Right.
access. Are there going to be additional access points put into this besides the ones that are there now, or?
At this point, we haven't identified any additional access points, except there would certainly be parking and trailhead at the north end of the trail. We want to keep in place and maintain the user patterns that are there now with some of the neighborhood streets that access the trail.
Okay.
What we will try to do is try to provide some access points from the neighborhoods on the east side of the right-of-way with some more signed and delineated access to the Riverside Trail in Seneca Park. If you're out there now and know your way around, you know how to walk there, but we'll try to make that clearer that there's going to be a primary pedestrian trail along the river bluff, so on the west side of the park. So we'll try to guide people from those neighborhood connections to the improved trail.
Yeah. Now, just for anyone that's never been, that hasn't been down there, the whole area around, I ride my bike sometimes along the west side where Rattlesnake Point is and everything, and it's really cool down there. I don't know if, it's a great trail down there. There's a nice bridge and it goes over the water a little bit and then comes back. You can't believe that you're in the middle of a relatively built-up area when you're down there. It's really, really nice. Have you Larry, I guess you and everyone, have you incorporated some of the other neighbors along the trail that have brought up concerns or had advice or comments or suggestions about ways to potentially improve the area along there?
This is kind of the beginning of our public input process. We did have one meeting with Monroe County and some of the neighbors at the south end of this trail.
Okay.
The genesis of the county purchasing the right-of-way was that they're going to be doing an additional overflow parking lot for the Seneca Park Zoo that was encroaching on the right-of-way. They needed that space, so they ended up buying this big, long stretch. So we did meet with some of the neighbors down there, and we walked the site with them, and the overall feedback was positive, as long as that their neighborhood use trail was going to remain open and accessible to them.
Okay.
Yeah, to expound on that, when you walk the trail, Chapel Hill Drive and south is where the neighbors are the closest to the trail, and some have actually done landscaping and things. Once you get north of Chapel Hill, or I'll just say Seneca Park Avenue, there's, I'll just say, kind of like a whole lot of nothing, because you're in the flats and then you're climbing the grade just west of Van Voorhis Avenue, and then the homes on Beacon View Court are fairly well set off from the old railroad grade and a bit higher. So the county purchasing this land and basically requesting that the main trail be in the Monroe County Park was fantastic as far as moving the activity away from residents who were concerned with a significant amount of people, very close to their houses.
Good, yeah.
One thing I think maybe would benefit the audience if you would just maybe define what a multi-use trail is.
Sure. A multi-use trail, that's a term used by AASHTO and Federal Highway for a trail that's suitable for shared use between bicyclists and people on foot. So there's certain minimum criteria we have to meet. AASHTO guidance suggests 12 feet wide. There's surface and grading aspects to it. But essentially, you're talking about something akin to the canal trail or a non-motorized pathway that can be used by numerous different user groups at once.
What's the surface in general?
Yet to be determined. I'm sure it'll be cost-driven, what our recommendation is. Typically, they're either gravel with a packed stone dust surface or asphalt. Yeah, both of those comply to AASHTO guidance and can be made ADA compliant. Depends a little bit on the slopes and conditions we're moving through and the cost of it.
So, am I understanding correctly that this is the first meeting where the public gets a chance to hear about it, and then we're going to have a second meeting sometime early in the summer?
Correct, that's right. At the second meeting, we would probably have preliminary recommendations for people to review and chime in on.
So I think it's important that anybody that sees this, or at the appropriate time, that we do the necessary publication so people that want to have input can be here to give us input at that point.
Is the meeting, second meeting could be with us or with someone else or at another location?
I believe the meeting would be with you.
Okay. How does this material get presented to the public? Is it available on the website, or is it going to be available on TV, or how is that?
We can put it on the website. You can provide digital files, and we can post them on the website.
Sure, no problem.
Will there be copies at the library?
If we have a copying budget, small, or boards like this, is that what you're talking about?
No, I was, even this report.
Okay. I'll look into the copying budget, because it is color.
Is it on your budget or is it on his budget?
No, it would be on our budget, and it would be on my budget, which is very, very, very small.
Well, we can, I can donate mine to the library if it helps. I mean, I've already looked over it. I think this is the
Bernie?
second copy.
Donate.
You know, they can be file copies not to be removed from the building, I suppose.
Bernie works as Xerox. I was,
Oh, I see. I thought Bernie was going to go.
not the right department, but, you know.
We're a services company.
Does the board have any other questions or input? The graphics are tremendous in here. I wish they were a little bigger for my old eyes, but I see why they are bigger. They're just transposed this. And, but there's a lot of information there.
You know, the only thing that's lousy about the trail on the other side is the hassle to get to it. You have to go down and around and up. And it's nice that you're just going to be coming right off of Thomas Ave. It's a lot easier to get onto the trail from this side. So,
Tremendous amenity.
Yeah.
They really are. Great.
Thanks.
At this point, I don't think there's any more input. We appreciate you being here and staying
My
so
pleasure.
late.
No problem.
I think we needed a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Does anyone second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor? I don't think we need a vote. Meeting adjourned.